At 6:00 p.m. on July 31st, 2025, Edwin Zakrzewski drew his final breath behind the walls of Florida State Prison. He committed one of the Sunshine State's most horrifying family massacre cases, a nightmare that began over 3 decades ago when a decorated military man transformed into an unthinkable monster.
A new record for the state of Florida. Governor DeSantis has signed the 9th death warrant this year, the most for any governor since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. The latest execution set for former Eglin Air Force Base airman Edwin Zakrzewski. He's convicted of killing his wife and 2 children. In 1996, Zakrzewski pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder, receiving 3 death sentences.
Zakrzewski, a former U.S. Air Force technical sergeant, had systematically slaughtered his wife, Sylvia, and their innocent children, 7-year-old Edward III and 5-year-old Anna, within the supposed safety of their own home in 1994. But here's the chilling milestone we've just witnessed. Zakrzewski's death has officially rewritten Florida's execution history. He becomes the 9th individual executed in 2025. This man eliminated his entire family using a machete, crowbar, and rope. The carnage was so unspeakable that the presiding judge declared he couldn't fathom a more vicious or barbaric manner of death. Now, let's dive deep into that fateful night in 1994 and uncover how a respected Air Force veteran descended into becoming one of Florida's most despised family annihilators. But before we explore the disturbing details of Zakrzewski's unforgivable acts, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This story ventures into darkness you absolutely cannot miss. Born on January 31, 1965, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Edward James Zakrzewski II had spent an astonishing 29 years awaiting his appointment with death, from his April 19, 1996 sentencing until that final moment. To put this in perspective, this man lingered on death row for nearly 3 decades. The lives he brutally extinguished belonged to his South Korean bride, Sylvia, and their precious children, 7-year-old Edward III, affectionately known as Kim, and 5-year-old Anna. The savage killings unfolded on June 9, 1994, transforming their Mary Esther, Florida home into a house of horrors. 3 first-degree murder convictions sealed his fate. Here's the staggering reality. Florida's death row currently warehouses 269 condemned souls, with over 100 languishing there for 3 decades or more. Zakrzewski's execution followed a mere 16 days after Michael Bell met his end on July 15th, marking the 2nd consecutive month in 2025 featuring dual executions. Governor Ron DeSantis has orchestrated an execution marathon this year, obliterating records that had stood untouched since the Reagan era. We're witnessing a lethal pace that defies modern precedent. To comprehend how we arrived at that blood-soaked evening, we must rewind to the beginning. And surprisingly, this tale initially unfolded as what appeared to be a classic military romance. In 1986, Technical Sergeant Edwin Zakrzewski was deployed in Montana when destiny introduced him to Pun Eun, a South Korean woman whose life would become tragically intertwined with his. Following their courtship and her pregnancy, marriage seemed natural, prompting her transformation into Sylvia, an American identity crafted for military community acceptance. Their union produced 2 beautiful children, Kim and baby Anna. As Zakrzewski advanced through Air Force ranks, their family endured the nomadic military lifestyle. A 3-year Korean assignment from 1989 to 1992 proved particularly challenging. Sylvia endured relentless discrimination for her interracial marriage and mixed heritage children. The emotional toll on this young mother and her innocent kids was undoubtedly devastating. The 1992 relocation to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida should have marked a fresh chapter for the family as they established roots in Mary Esther, Okaloosa County. Instead, Edward and Sylvia's marriage continued its downward spiral, with court records documenting escalating domestic turmoil. What makes this story truly spine-chilling is the testimony from neighbors who revealed Zakrzewski's previous death threats. On 2 separate occasions, he had coldly declared he would kill her and the children before he let that happen, his twisted response to any mention of divorce. Meanwhile, Sylvia had been secretly contemplating escape, dreaming of returning to South Korea with her precious children. The catalyst that ignited this family's destruction? A single devastating phone call on June 9, 1994. While Zakrzewski was stationed at work, his innocent 7-year-old son Kim dialed his father's number. In that fateful conversation, young Kim unknowingly signed his family's death warrant by revealing Mommy's plans to file for divorce and relocate to South Korea. For Zakrzewski, who had already twice vowed to commit familicide rather than face abandonment, this revelation triggered his darkest fears. Rather than exploding in anger, he shifted into calculated killer mode. During his lunch break, he purchased a machete from a local retailer. Returning home, he assembled his arsenal, adding a crowbar and rope to his deadly collection. With meticulous precision, he concealed these instruments of death in the bathroom, even taking time to hone the machete's blade. Then, displaying chilling composure, he returned to his duties and later attended an evening college class, maintaining his facade of normalcy. That night, as his unsuspecting family returned home, Zakrzewski orchestrated his horrific plan. After directing the children to their television programs, he launched his assault on Sylvia, bludgeoning her repeatedly with the crowbar before dragging her to the bedroom for continued brutalization. He then strangled her with rope, though medical examiner Dr. Edward Harvard's findings revealed the most disturbing detail. Sylvia remained conscious during the strangulation despite suffering a fractured skull and at least 8 machete lacerations across her back. Her torment concluded only after he dragged her corpse to the bathroom for final mutilation. The children's murders represent the absolute nadir of human depravity. Zakrzewski lured 7-year-old Kim to the bathroom under the innocent pretense of teeth brushing. Once inside, the boy's own father unleashed a machete frenzy, nearly severing Kim's head while inflicting fatal wounds to his head, neck, and spine. 5-year-old Anna faced the same deceptive summons for dental hygiene. The terror this innocent child experienced is unimaginable. She likely witnessed her brother's slaughter. Both children bore defensive wounds on their arms and hands, heartbreaking evidence of their desperate attempts to fend off their murderous father. The savagery was so incomprehensible that Judge Barron, while delivering Zakrzewski's sentence, declared it inconceivable to imagine a more heinous or atrocious way of dying. Following his barbaric acts, Zakrzewski didn't linger at the crime scene. He immediately fled to Orlando, boarding a Hawaii-bound flight where he orchestrated a complete identity transformation. Adopting the alias Michael Green, he ingeniously infiltrated a religious commune operated by a minister's family, securing shelter in a modest shack by offering his services as a maintenance worker. For an incredible 4-month period, this charade succeeded brilliantly. While Florida law enforcement launched an intensive investigation, Zakrzewski maintained his low-profile existence in paradise. Back in the Sunshine State, detectives had uncovered the massacre and swiftly identified Zakrzewski as their primary target. Authorities filed 3 murder charges against him in absentia, while the Air Force officially classified him as absent without leave. Despite a comprehensive nationwide dragnet, the killer had seemingly evaporated without a trace. Then fate intervened in the most unexpected way. 4 months post-murders, the case appeared on Unsolved Mysteries, the iconic television program renowned for cracking cold cases. The minister's family gathered around their television that evening and suddenly recognized their trusted handyman, Michael Green, as the fugitive killer displayed on their screen. The tension became palpable when the minister casually observed to Zakrzewski that the wanted man bore a striking resemblance to him. Picture that suffocating moment of recognition. The psychological pressure proved overwhelming. Merely 24 hours after the Unsolved Mysteries broadcast on October 15, 1994, Zakrzewski marched into a police station and surrendered. His October 25th extradition to Florida didn't end his criminal scheming. While detained at Okaloosa County Jail awaiting trial, Zakrzewski and a fellow inmate orchestrated an August 1995 jailbreak attempt. Their plan crumbled when guards caught them attempting to breach the prison perimeter, another spectacular failure. When trial proceedings commenced, Zakrzewski shocked everyone with an unexpected decision. On March 19, 1996, before jury selection could begin, he entered guilty pleas to all 3 first-degree murder charges. This strategic move bypassed the guilt phase entirely, leaving only the penalty determination, life imprisonment versus execution. Prosecutor Assistant State Attorney Bobby Elmore launched an aggressive death penalty campaign for all 3 victims. Elmore methodically demonstrated how these killings epitomized heinous, atrocious, and cruel criminality. He stressed the premeditated, calculated nature of the violence. This wasn't spontaneous rage, but orchestrated annihilation. Elmore particularly emphasized 5-year-old Anna's prolonged terror, being the final victim who likely witnessed her brother's brutal demise. Defense attorney Elton Killam pursued a dramatically different approach, advocating for life imprisonment through a controversial strategy. Killam portrayed Zakrzewski as suffering extreme emotional and psychological disturbance, claiming Sylvia had tormented him through alleged infidelity and gambling addiction. Most shockingly, the defense argued Zakrzewski acted from misguided mercy, believing his children would endure discrimination as half-breeds in Korea, and that he intended their deaths to be swift and painless. Despite calling the entire case bizarre, Killam still pleaded for life imprisonment. On March 31, 1996, the jury delivered their fateful recommendations. By narrow 7-5 margins, they endorsed death sentences for both Sylvia and Kim's murders. However, little Anna's case produced a deadlocked 6-6 split, which under Florida law automatically triggered a life imprisonment recommendation. Judge G. Robert Barron had different intentions entirely. On April 19, 1996, he exercised his judicial override authority, rejecting the jury's life sentence recommendation for Anna and condemning Zakrzewski to death for all 3 killings. Barron's rationale centered on Anna's unimaginable terror, the psychological torment of witnessing her brother's slaughter while knowing her father intended to murder her next. Naturally, Zakrzewski launched an aggressive legal counteroffensive. What ensued was an epic, nearly 3-decade marathon of appeals, exhaustive judicial challenges pursued through every conceivable avenue. The Florida Supreme Court affirmed all 3 death sentences on June 12, 1998. The U.S. Supreme Court subsequently rejected his petition on January 25, 1999. Undeterred, Zakrzewski's legal team persisted relentlessly. The Florida Supreme Court dismissed his post-conviction challenge in 2003. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals rejected his federal appeal in 2006, then denied a subsequent attempt in 2009. His attorneys glimpsed hope in 2017 when Florida modified its statutes requiring unanimous jury verdicts for capital punishment. They immediately filed for resentencing on May 25, 2017, but the Florida Supreme Court crushed those aspirations, ruling the legislative change wasn't retroactive since his sentences achieved finality in 1999. Another 2018 attempt met identical rejection. Even his final desperate appeal, filed merely 9 days before execution on July 22, 2025, was swiftly denied by the Florida Supreme Court. By 2016, marking Zakrzewski's 20th death row anniversary, he joined 141 Florida inmates who had essentially depleted their legal remedies. Ironically, Florida reversed course in 2023, abolishing the unanimity requirement and permitting death sentences with simple 8-4 jury majorities. After nearly 3 decades of courtroom warfare, appeals, and procedural delays, Zakrzewski had finally exhausted every legal lifeline and temporal reprieve. July 31st, 2025. Zakrzewski woke up at 5:15 a.m., knowing he would never see another sunrise. For his last meal, he chose something basic: fried pork chops, root beer, and ice cream. Not fancy, but that's what he wanted. At 6:00 p.m. sharp, the death chamber curtain opened. There was Zakrzewski on the table, covered by a white sheet. After almost 30 years waiting to die, his time had come. The warden asked if he had any last words. What he said was strange. "I want to thank the good people of the Sunshine State for killing me in the most cold, calculated, clean, humane, efficient way possible. I have no complaint." The execution was fast and clean. The drugs started flowing, and Edwin Zakrzewski was declared dead at 6:12 p.m., just 12 minutes from beginning to end. Zakrzewski's death made Florida break a record. 9 executions in 2025, more than any year in modern times, and there are still 5 months left. This case shows us that evil can hide behind normal-looking people, even those we should be able to trust. If you liked this video, please hit like, share it, and subscribe. We cover scary cases like this one regularly.